So what we're going to be the things that we're going to be going over, how GA4 will impact your business, and it's sort of a bit about switching from universal analytics. Well, I'll start get into the agenda in a second. So who am I? I lead our analytics practice at 2 Octobers. I'm also one of the co-founders here. And if you're not familiar with us, we are a fanatically analytical digital agency. We do digital marketing services, including paid social, search marketing, organic search optimization, content strategy, and a lot of analytics. So we certainly bring a lot of analytics know-how to everything we do, and we help clients with analytics specifically. I teach analytics in a variety of contexts, one of them at University of Denver, and I like making bells in my spare time. I do other things in my spare time too, but I started bronze casting bells a few years ago. So if you want to stay really towards the end, then you can ask me about that. So another important aspect of 2 Octobers, we are a B Corp, which if you're not familiar with, check out the B Corp certification and B Corp movement. Generally, the idea behind B Corps is we believe that business can be a force for good, that as business organizations, we can codify our values and have a positive impact on the world. I love what people in the B Corp community do, a lot of cool stuff. So things that we're going to talk about. I just want to quickly cover GA4. Probably if you're here, you have some familiarity. I might mention a couple of things you're less familiar with, but just to give a little context, and then just get into specifics of the impact of GA4 on your business in kind of from two different angles. One being just sort of what it takes to get up to speed, and then what are some of the like benefits that you get from having GA4 in place. We'll cover when to switch, and then I'll make a last small appeal for why I think organizations generally underinvest in analytics. And really by that, I think I especially mean, well, I think I do especially mean the data collection infrastructure and getting complete and accurate data. And then we'll switch over to Q&A. So, and like I said, I'll keep an eye on chat if there are things that I bring up and you're not sure about along the way, but also feel free to toss things in there that we'll cover later. So GA4 in a nutshell. So this was on my screen now is the original announcement that Google made in October of 2020 when they released GA4 and immediately made it the default analytics. It had existed as what were called app and web properties for a little while before that, or at least a precursor to GA4. There were some pretty significant differences between what they had called app and web properties and the GA4 that they released in October 2020. But from a sort of ancestry standpoint, it evolved out of app and web properties. They mention a few things here. I'm not going to go into their specifics. I'm going to talk about what I think is important to know. And some of it will be duplicative of what they say, but some of these things I think are less useful to talk about. Another really important thing to be aware of if you're not already is that Google announced in March of this year that they would, like, I don't know, many of you, I didn't think of it this way. I just thought of Google Analytics as Google Analytics, but they've started calling it Universal Analytics. Certainly that name has existed for a while, but everybody just said Google Analytics. But now we say Universal Analytics to differentiate between the version that we're familiar with and GA4. So universal analytics will be going away, and they said that they'll stop processing new data in July 1st of 2023. So that means that you'll still be able to log into your account and see data, but you won't be able to see any data from July 1st next year onwards. So that's a huge deal, and I assume some of you are aware of that, and which is why you're interested in learning more, because like, of course, the purpose of collecting data is to understand how people are engaging with our website, how our marketing platform channels are performing, um, thinking about like our user experience, the types of people visiting our website, the things that we want to know, like they all benefit from historical context. So like if we want to understand geographically who's coming to our website, then being able to see that over time is really important to see if there's trends. That's a lot of what we use analytics for, is to understand trends over time. And so we've got this hard limit of like, if you want to see trend data, there's a lot of pressure to start thinking about getting up to speed and getting your GA4 set up properly. So just a quick timeline. Like, I think this is interesting just because really, like, the original, the very first version of Google Analytics was launched in 2005, and I call it a beta launch. I don't think they actually called it that, but it was kind of an invite only thing, that you had to whatever, put your email address in and get invited to use it. It wasn't really until 2006 that everybody could have a Google Analytics account. And they did a pretty significant update. So 2005, what had happened is they bought this tool called Urchin. It didn't look anything like the Google Analytics the version that launched in 2006 looked very much like what you know. Like a lot of the layout and color scheme and a lot of the standard reports and everything were very much like what you're familiar with. So if like anybody who has used it over time has been familiar with a form of Google Analytics, it's changed very little. But what they did call at the time Universal Analytics launched in 2012, and that was both a pretty big change in how tracking worked, but also in the UX. Like it was a refinement, but if you were used to using Google Analytics, you didn't need to learn the new interface. There were just some reports that hadn't existed before, and some of the data collection capabilities really improved at that time. So as a user, you could have been completely unaware of that launch. This is the first time that they've made a change where you have to, like, you actually have to go and do something on a timeline. Even like there are still sites that use the tracking tag that predates the asynchronous tracking tag that they released in 2009. Like I run into it somewhat regularly, that a client that I'm working with still has the pre-2009 tag on their website. So that's pretty remarkable. But just to say, like there has been very little pressure, even when they've made changes, they haven't forced changes in the way that they're doing it right now. So, all right, a little bit about what it is. It really is a profoundly different tool from what it has been. Certainly the thing, like the use cases that it helps to solve, understanding who your audience is, understanding where they come from, what they do on your website, how your marketing channels perform, like those, like the goals of the tool are the same, but how it works is profoundly different. So let's talk a little bit about some of those differences. The reporting interface has changed completely. You're probably aware of that. The event-based data model, so they moved to this event-based data model, which is like, I'm not going to go into the technical aspects of it too much right now. Certainly have time to talk about it during Q&A, but where the design of universal analytics and analytics up until now was really built primarily around the idea of page views, and then they introduced some other what were called hit types, and that was e-commerce transactions, various other events was another hit type. So to be able to track other types of things. But in the case of GA4, what you're reporting on is events, and really anything that is possible to track can be an event, and the world of things that are possible to track is I mean, really honestly just about anything you could think of. So the tags that you implement are new and different. These are some sort of technical differences, and the API is different, and that's really important because it does mean that anything you have set up in Data Studio has to be updated, and third-party integration. So if you're doing e-commerce on like Shopify, for example, it's worked seamlessly. You didn't have to do anything, and you could see when people add things to their cart and a variety of things. Let me just forgot to disable notifications, so turn those off. You don't have to see my people texting me on my screen. So and this, I mean, there's a lot of things that count as third-party integrations. Like if you have Calendly integrated in your site and you've been tracking that, the way that works is well, doesn't work very well in GA4 yet. There are a lot of things like if you're tracking anything that you're using on your website to do something like sell tickets and help people like pick a time for an appointment or purchase a product or start set a calendar appointment, all those sorts of things. That has changed, and that's probably a lot of the complexity of making the change. There's the whole sort of learning the new interface, but in terms of the work that goes into getting set up properly, a lot of it has to do with these third-party things that you might be doing on your website. I will say, if you just have a WordPress site where you've got a lead form and maybe a video or something, a few videos, like that kind of site, setting up in GA4 is a piece of cake. It really gets complicated when there's a lot of functionality, and particularly that functionality comes from third-party tools that are installed on your site. So a few of the things that are going away or have gone away with GA4, and some of them have been replaced. So segments has a very equivalent thing called comparisons. Views and view filters, this one's really important and something to think about and can add complexity. If you're using views in analytics to do things like maybe see different subdomains on your website, to have a view that filters out internal traffic and a view that doesn't. You can still filter out internal traffic, but you can't create a view that doesn't and a view that does, for example. So if you're, I guess, those of you who are using views know who you are, and they've gone away, which is challenging. And if that's a particular issue for you, we can. That's a perfect thing to talk about in Q&A of kind of how to overcome that or tactics for dealing with the fact that views aren't supported. People have talked about this a lot, like bounce rate went away. Bounce rate was sort of a weird statistic anyway, because what it really meant was a single interaction visit in Universal Analytics. So what that could mean is it could be somebody that comes and reads a blog post for half an hour could count as a bounce in Universal Analytics. It really had a lot to do with how your site was set up. Like your bounce rate was less a function of how good you were at retaining users and more a function of how tracking was set up on your website. They've replaced it with engagement rate that is a little bit more meaningful in terms of identifying engaged users. Well, I wouldn't say they've replaced, I mean, it isn't a one-for-one replacement, but if you cared about bounce rate, engagement rate is a good proxy, and I think actually a better representation of the percentage of users that are actually engaging with their content. Behavior flow, it has gone away. This one's pretty frustrating. They have something that's called a path exploration, but honestly, it's lame. It's not like behavior flow is so wonderful, but at least you could use it to kind of understand how people were engaging with your website and how they were moving through different sections of your website. Much harder to do with path exploration, so hopefully that's something that they'll be improving. a lot, like there are a lot fewer reports overall. Just I mean, I guess I suppose I should just do a count so I can talk about it in absolute numbers, but like I mean, if you're used to Google Analytics, there's a ton of reports drilling into a whole wide variety of things. That's really changed, and you could argue that GA4 makes it like you can go to a single report and sort of change parameters to see more data. But that isn't like there are definitely reports that have just gone away, and you would have to recreate them to get back at them. This numbered conversion goals is kind of a weird thing to comment on, but so in GA4, I mean, in Universal Analytics, you could say like a contact us form completion is goal number 3, and then you could identify that and pull it out and report on it specifically. And you could look at reports and just say, I only want to see goal conversion 3, make custom reports. You could pull it into dashboards. That doesn't exist anymore. We just have events. Any event can be a conversion. And there's a summary, like there's a statistic, which is like conversions, but it's really kind of annoying and tedious to pull out the specific conversion events. And again, that's a good topic for Q&A to get into workarounds to deal with that fact. But like really, like any event can be a conversion, and we don't like, so we can't actually just pull an event as a column into a Data Studio report or something, a specific event, and say, I want to know how many people filled out my contact us form. Not without doing a little bit of fanciness to make it that possible. The way events worked in Universal Analytics, conversely, was horrific. Like it was just a ridiculous way of implementing anything. Like it was just a bolt-on. It hadn't existed in the original version. They kind of introduced it at some point to provide more flexibility, but you were forced into this category action label, and there was no consistency. And like people created event spam and stuff. Like you could go and look at your event report, and it was just like, whatever, like apple, orange, penguin. Like it was completely heterogeneous naming. If you worked with third-party tools, they would create their own events, and there was just very difficult interface to navigate, and you couldn't pull them into most reports. So you can actually use events to understand things about your website, because they existed kind of in their own little walled garden apart from everything else. So a huge step forward in that regard. So a few new things, which and I've mentioned some things that are frustrating. I have actually come to really appreciate, like, maybe I won't go as far as love, but I think I could say love GA4. So there are things that are like you have to get your head around. They are different. The overall architecture is really a significant leap forward. The flexibility, the power of being able to set it up to do what you want it to do, I love about it. That doesn't mean work. It doesn't mean you've got to know what you're doing. But in my opinion, that's always been necessary. It's just that people didn't do it with Universal Analytics. Now you sort of have to, but with Universal Analytics, you could just kind of whatever set up to do page view tracking, and then kind of, pardon my language, but half-ass the rest, and you had something of value. Like you do, you do need to whole ass GA4 to really get the value out of it. I think that's always been true, but it's a little more obvious in GA4. So BigQuery integration, kind of exciting. You can directly link data into BigQuery if you're doing sort of significant data analysis. That's a super powerful feature. And what that means is that all event level data goes directly into BigQuery. And you can actually use that real time if you wanted to create interactivity on your website. Like that, the integration is that close. Like the data is streaming into BigQuery directly as it happens. But then you could also do really interesting stuff with analysis. App tracking, for those of you that matters, that's huge. For most people I interact with, it doesn't matter, and so sort of like, okay, great. I think this is one of my favorite things that we've all been suffering from the fact that Google Analytics does this last non-direct click conversion attribution, and And what that means is that you could see conversions attributed to goal conversions attributed to the last thing that somebody did before they converted. And so that most of the time was going to be a brand search in paid search or organic search, because really how often does somebody actually become a customer on their first visit? So you attract them via social media, they leave, they come back later. But the way they come back is they type in your business name in Google, like everybody does, and they click on an organic or a paid listing, and then they come to your website and it gets attributed to that source. So in GA4, by default, it actually uses data-driven attribution, which means that it develops a model for how to attribute conversions based on how it sees different channels contributing to conversions, which is pretty amazing. Like, and you can change it if you don't like that idea. You can change it to a variety of specific models. But in any case, it's not just saying that the last thing that somebody did is the only thing that matters when it comes to conversions. Related are user dimensions, and what those are is that you can see dimensions both at the session level, at the user level. So an example would be seeing the source of a visit is a session dimension. Seeing the source that a person came from the first time they visited your website is a user dimension. So there are a variety of dimensions that you can see both at the session level and at the user level. And a way of thinking about users level dimensions is the first way they came to your website, the sort of their first original source is a typical instance of a user dimension. So I mentioned much better architecture for events in general, but also for creating your own custom events, dimensions, and metrics. So again, sort of bolted on to Universal Analytics, really that's how GA4 is built from the ground up, was with the idea that you're going to be taking advantage of custom events and tying them to your own, the dimensions that you create, the metrics that you create to measure what's really meaningful to you. The interface itself is very customizable. This is not obvious when you go in there, but you can define the reports that you want to see. You can add your own reports, and really, like, the navigation and everything is very customizable. Not, again, not obvious on the surface, but a really powerful feature. Explorations are new. You could sort of think of them as like a somewhere a cross between custom reports from Universal Analytics and Data Studio reports. And the idea of these, I mean, I think they have different use cases, but one would be like, hey, we had a big traffic drop last month. I'm going to create some explorations on what caused this traffic drop, and then I'm going to share them with the team, and everybody can see them. So sort of a way of creating custom reports within the interface. That's an example, but there are a lot of ways that you might want to do that. So I mentioned some good new things, some things that went away that are a little unfortunate. But something that I like to say, like, I think Google Analytics is the most powerful, one of the most powerful tools you have on your computer or available to you, and it's free. I think most people don't appreciate how powerful it is because you don't have to pay anything for it. So there's organizations are typically not motivated to invest a lot in setting it up and learning how to get the most out of it. But there's really a remarkable number of free features, especially for something that's free. And I said that just now. So, all right. So let's get into a little bit of how it's going to impact your business. And I thought 20 minutes of presenting was going to be optimistic. We'll get to Q&A soon. So in terms of effort, you are going to need a person or people with advanced expertise in Tag Manager, Data Studio, and GA, or a lot of interest and aptitude to get there. And we'll talk about resources to, like if this is something that you want to tackle or somebody on your team wants to tackle, and you have the sort of, like, you're comfortable tackling it from a technical standpoint, you just don't know a lot about GA4. I'll share some resources, but that is what it takes. It's definitely not, like, getting it set up properly is not for non-technical people. Like I mentioned before, I don't think that was true of, I mean, I think the same is true of Universal Analytics, but it was possible to at least get page view tracking working pretty well if you were not technical. sort of saying how long it takes, really, like I mentioned, like a website that's just WordPress with a few forms, and maybe some videos and a couple other sort of lightweight interactions, is going to be a really quick setup, especially if you know what you're doing. But it could be a serious undertaking if you really want to take advantage of the power of GA4, specifically creating custom events, custom dimensions and metrics based on those. And if you're using Data Studio a lot, there's going to be also all the time to get that set up, because it doesn't translate at all. Like if you have a Data Studio dashboard set up using Universal Analytics data, it's a do-over. Like you can't just sort of point to a new data source and like what you're going to get is a bunch of broken reports. So feature-wise, this is a sort of dark view, but if all you do is just get it set up, you are going to get the benefit of multiple attribution models. You get the benefit of user dimensions. There are some really interesting new metrics related to e-commerce that I think are really valuable that you don't have to do a lot with. But most of the things that I mentioned in terms of the power of GA4 are going to take time and investment to get to. So I'm highlighting a few that you'll get right out of the gate. I guess I should have highlighted automatic events, just because things like scroll tracking happen automatically, which used to be something that you had to get set up. So there are a few things like that. Video tracking is another one that just happens if if the video player is embedded and sends the appropriate JavaScript events, which generally YouTube embeds will do automatically, depending on what how you're serving video. It may not be true, but in any case, that is a useful feature. You'll probably get some benefit from that right out of the gate. And I guess I didn't explain what automatic events are. Those are just like where Universal Analytics, the only thing you got if you just did a basic setup, you just follow the steps to get it set up, would be page view tracking. With Universal Analytics, you get page views, you get scrolls, you get video views, you get offsite clicks, you get site searches, and one that I'm not remembering off the top of my head. But in any case, you get well, page views, if I didn't mention that. So you get the more tracking just automatically from getting the tracking tag on your website. So I want to just, before I get to Q&A, I guess I want to talk about sort of the vision, because there's a lot of vision behind GA4 that I think is really important. And so I'm going to pull this up. This is my take. In the information is the same. So Gartner put together this analytics maturity model. Their visualization of it, I think, is a little bit harder to reinterpret. But the idea is that as an organization or like a project or whatever, like you're going to assess sort of analytics maturity. So let's say your organization. So on the left, we all start with descriptive analytics, like being able to understand what happened via analytics. Then we get to diagnostic, which is, okay, can we use the analytics data that we're collecting to understand why things happen? The next stage up is predictive analytics. Can we start to use this data to create predictive models to understand what will happen? And then that leads to prescriptive analytics, where you want to increase revenue, and you analyze, you start to predict seasonal changes in data and create a predictive model, which can then inform a marketing strategy to get ahead of the game and reach people based on seasonal behavior. So that's sort of the goal at the end of the rainbow from a marketing standpoint, is that we're using the data to start to create predictive and prescriptive models to say, if we do this, we're going to be able to increase revenue, leads, customers, whatever the outcome it is that we're trying to maximize. They actually include a few more dimensions in their version of it. They're basically trying to squeeze like a 9-dimensional model into a 2-dimensional picture, but they have this hindsight, insight, foresight, which is a simple way of kind of looking at the overall idea. So why I think this is really important to think about is that we all want to get to prescriptive analytics. That's where and I'll go further than say we want to get there. We have to get there if we want to compete in the world that we live in right now. That organization, many organizations are investing in predictive and prescriptive analytics. So just to keep up, we need to be there. With GA4, it's a much more powerful platform than Universal Analytics for descriptive analytics because it has complete flexibility in what it is that you're tracking. So like how many, I don't know, just like off the top of your head, like how important are page views really to your business? Unless you're a publisher and you have a revenue per page view model, probably not very. Like it doesn't mean any kind of engagement. You can get a high number of page views by having blog posts that are irrelevant to your business, but have a lot of appeal, and maybe they've been around for a while. They generate a lot of page views. Doesn't really matter. That's what Universal Analytics is. That's the first thing it was built to track, and it's the main thing it tracks still today. So GA4 is much better at conforming to what are the things that happen that you care about. From a diagnostic analytics, also has tools built in, so better machine learning tools to start to give you a feeling for, here are trends, like we're pointing out what, like here's something, an anomaly. It's not going to answer the question of why, but it's going to get you a lot closer by saying, like, highlighting changes and the dimensions that are seem to correlate closest to why those changes happened, which gets you really close to the why. It's not going to out and out answer it for you, but get you a lot closer there. Then predictive analytics, again, I mentioned the link into BigQuery, where BigQuery is a very powerful platform for creating models around predictive analytics. So you can create machine learning models directly in BigQuery to build predictive models, and then there are a variety of other capabilities. If you don't use BigQuery, you can easily create a conduit from BigQuery into Snowflake or something else to do essentially the same thing. So prescriptive analytics I'm not including here just because that is sort of outside of the realm of a tool that collects data. But the thing that I guess I would just draw the most attention to is that the descriptive analytics is the foundation, and getting that accurate and complete is what everything else is built on. So I mean, just anecdotally, I mean, I look at hundreds of analytics accounts a year, and I would say occasionally I come across one that's set up well, where I don't, within a few minutes of auditing, find obvious problems with how data collection is happening. Like really, like a few times a year and I look at hundreds a year. I will say this model is beautiful. Like you get it. Like, yeah, it's wonderful. We've had the tools to be there, like with Universal Analytics. We have to, like, you really don't have a choice with GA4. You have to think through the data that you're collecting and how you're collecting it in a way that you didn't with Universal Analytics, but you could have with Universal Analytics. It wasn't, the tool wasn't the thing stopping you. You were the thing stopping you. And I don't, okay, that sounds condescending and preachy. It is a little preachy, but I apologize. This is, I mean, this is just a fact of life. This is not, everybody deals with this. It is a subject I'm super passionate about, but we're, I don't know, we're all in this together. It's not like the 2 October's Google account, analytics account is set up perfectly. So I should not be casting any stones. When to switch now? Honestly, it's that simple. Like, you can run them side by side, but the thing is, like, a year from now, we're looking at August 2023, Universal Analytics will have stopped collecting data in July. So you're no longer going to have a year's worth of data if you're not already up to speed on GA4. So no reason not to do it. You're going to have to make the investment. Like, you should do it now so you're collecting historical data. A few resources, the Google Analytics demo account, if you don't have a GA4 account set up, or you just want to see how it works and everything, search Google Analytics demo account. This follow this link, it'll take you, and then there'll be another link, and it'll essentially log you into that demo account, and then you'll have access from that point forward. And there is a Universal Analytics demo account, but there are a couple of GA4 demo accounts that you can have a look at. So that's a really useful resource. Well, this deck is shared, so I'm going to go through this up pretty fast. I love Benjamin Mangel's course on GA4. There's a mini course that costs like $75, and then a more comprehensive course that still only costs like $225 or something like that. He explains things really well. He's got videos walking through everything. And I don't know, he just does a good job with video production and everything. I think he makes it pretty easy to follow. I love Julius Fedorovicus for like his thoroughness in terms of you're just like, I can't figure out how to make this work. His blog posts are unbelievably detailed, and he keeps them up to date, which is wonderful. And reach out to me. So I've got my contact information. One other thing is Google just released GA4 certification. And if you've done any of their other sort of Google Ads or analytics certifications, I would say their training is pretty good. It's fairly superficial. You're definitely not going to know how to use the tool or troubleshoot when going through it, but you'll really learn a lot about the features, which is not surprising since they want people to use it, and learning about the features is a way to get people to use it. So I wouldn't say it's a great resource in terms of how-to so much. I would go to Benjamin Mangold for that. But kind of cool to say you're GA4 certified. So just be aware they just released that certification, I think last week or the week before. Final case, investing in analytics. This is napkin math. Let's say you spend $10,000 a month on marketing. You optimize your marketing to conversion value, because of course you do, because we should all be doing that. But your measurement of conversions is off by 20%. You're wasting approximately $24,000 a year because you're garbage in, garbage out. You've got bad data that you're building everything on. And it may not be exactly that, because it may not, like, whatever, the data is incomplete. Doesn't mean that everything you're doing is wrong based on that data, but nonetheless, I mean, just think about that math. Like I don't know, I encounter people all the time that wouldn't bat an eye at spending thousands of dollars a month on Google Ads, but haven't invested much at all in getting their analytics data collection accurate. And so a lot of the money that they're spending is wasted. That's it. Here's some contact info. This deck is shared. And we're going to pop over to questions.